everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today, Solidarity Fridays. This is our series of Friday episodes where we go through news and timely discussion topics related to psychedelics and the drug war in general and many other topics. So today we have Michelle Janicki and Kyle Buller joining me, Joe Moore. How are you both doing?
Doing well. Thank you.
Yeah, very
in a new
good.
location.
A new location. You never go to the second location. I think that's a kidnapping story. Never go to the second location. But yeah, you're in a basement in New Hampshire. Cool. Michelle, you're still in New Jersey for a little bit longer before heading back home to Mexico. I bet you can't wait to get back. But
I do miss my dogs and my partner a lot.
Yeah. So like almost 4 weeks away.
It'll be a total of 5 when I get back. Yeah. I've been gone for almost 4. I know. It's a long trip. It really is.
Well, good for you. All right. Well, before we dig into all of this news, let's talk about navigating psychedelics for clinicians and therapists, just because you probably haven't heard of it yet. So we have an 8-week class that we run, specifically trying to get therapists and clinicians up to speed on the psychedelic topic, give you a good foundation for the field in general. Because do you really want to jump into a $20,000 program without knowing exactly where you want to be in the space yet? Do you know if you want to be a trip sitter? Like, how many trip sits have you done? Has it gotten really ugly yet? There's a lot to this story and deciding where you want to be. There's so many organizations you could work for or create. And we give you a CE approved class. I think we offer 12 CE hours. APA approved through the Center for Spiritual Competency. Is that their current name, Kyle?
Spiritual Competency Academy. Yeah, they changed.
Oh, that's right. They just rechanged. Okay. Yeah, and the credits are good for nurses, therapists, and psychologists. I'm sure it's transferable into other professions as well. Just check with your licensing board to see if it works, if you want those. And I believe we start up July 20. Let me actually confirm those dates. It looks like July 22. It's on Thursdays.
22nd.
So come on down to psychedeliceducationcenter.com or psychedelicstoday.com to learn more. If the classes aren't of interest, just share an episode with a friend if you'd love to support us. We also would love a small monthly donation as low as $2 a month at patreon.com/psychedelicstoday so we can keep this thing rolling. All right, everybody, let's dig in. So lots to go through. So let's see what we can handle today. Yeah, I made this fun Friday order. So one of the first ones I want to talk about is a Chacruna article from the other day, Susi's Tram Ride, recognizing the first woman to take LSD. So not only was Susi the first woman to take LSD, she was the first female trip sitter for an LSD trip.
First
roughly.
trip sitter ever, because she was Albert Hofman's trip sitter when he took his first ever dose on Bicycle Day, April 19th. So she is, also riding her bicycle home with him, watches him, calls the, neighborhood doctor and the next door neighbor to bring over like milk, if you know the story. So this is who was with Albert Hofman on his first journey, the first LSD facilitator ever. Yeah.
So yeah, that's a big deal. And the story is little known, right? Like Switzerland, Europe in general, somewhat patriarchal. And as a result, like we don't necessarily get the whole story often. And somewhat patriarchal might be a euphemism for like extraordinarily patriarchal.
Especially back then, right? I mean, we're talking about the late 1930s, early 1940s. But yeah, so this article by Chacruna is really just pointing out that, if we're going to celebrate Bicycle Day on April 19th, maybe we could also celebrate, June 12th is the date that Susi Ramstein, that's her first name, the research assistant, that was the first time she took LSD and was the first woman to take LSD, which is kind of special. It's pretty cool. It was 1943. She was also the youngest person person to have tried it. She was only 22 at the time, and she took 100 micrograms.
Wow.
So like, you know, a pretty standard, like 1 tab dose for nowadays standards, which was also, though, larger than Dr. Hofman's male colleagues, which I did obviously revel in that little detail. But yeah, it's just like an interesting story. There's not that much details about it. And the writers of the article, one of which is Erica Dyke, who's, you know, like does a lot of work on like women in the history of psychedelics. She's written a bunch of essays on this that are really fascinating. And so she's just trying to piece together, you know, this history, this first woman to take LSD. And so this article in Chacruna goes into what little she could find through, you know, some like lab reports and things of the time. Obviously, she didn't write a whole book like Albert Hofmann did. And so her narrative isn't, you know, as publicized. She's also already passed away, so we can't go and ask her for more details now. But also, Hofmann didn't even name her by name in the book, which is a little gutting. But it's
I wonder
an
why that
interesting
is.
story. Yeah.
I loved in the article how they pointed out the way the verbs were written to pin down it was a female.
In German. So
German.
like, yeah, they're using like pronouns or like the adjectives are in the feminine form. And so that's the only way you can even tell that the research assistant was a woman. And then I think people went and did a little reporting to find out like, who is this woman? Like, yeah, we want to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, you know, this is peak World War II, right? Let's not forget that. And, you know, what we're seeing in Hollywood world now is finally female stories around World War II. Like the, you know, the calculator ladies that were just cranking out stuff. You know, I guess that might have been related to the space race, but there were essential figures in the war effort that were female. And let's not forget it. We really got to remember that. And there's been a long history of women in psychedelia and in, you know, plant work. If we look at the European traditions, women were the holders of a lot of that wisdom and knowledge about plants and the ethereal realms, or whatever you want to call it, witchcraft generally. So, you know, let's honor it. Thank you, Erica. And who are the other writers on this piece, Michelle? Did you catch that?
Can check. I don't have it in my notes here, but
I really love
let me
Erica.
pull it up. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Marivada, oh my goodness gracious. Dr. Mangini, let's just do that. The PhD FNP. The first name looks impossible, so sorry about that. All right. So next up here, if that's okay,
Yes.
is this Pill ID app on LAD Bible. LAD Bible?
Lad Bible. It's like a British like bro magazine, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, nice. So like Bro Bible.
Yeah.
Familiar with Bro Bible, of course.
Is that a thing? I actually didn't even know that.
I think it is. I think it is. It's ridiculous. But Lad Bible, this article by Tom Wood discusses a new app. It's clearly like a press release type app, article. But Pill-ID lets people take pictures of their pills, and the app should cross-check them against a database for details, including their MDMA content and risk level and potential side effects. So on one hand, this is a good thing. On one hand, this is a ridiculous thing, right?
Why ridiculous, Joe? What do you mean?
Why ridiculous? Because it is so easy to mimic the same press somebody else is using.
True.
So like, you know, Teslas, Nikes, whatever. I'm just thinking like a Ja Rule song on ecstasy from forever ago. Like they had all the different names of the ecstasy pills that people were eating. And as soon as one gets popular, why wouldn't a young upstart start making their own to cut into that market? And it's pretty easy to press pills with a little press, like, you know, it's like a hand press, like a cap maker. So it is not clear if all Teslas are the same or all Nike swooshes are the same or whatever you got.
Yeah.
Punisher, all this stuff.
That's a really good...
I mean, we were just going through drugsdata.org, which used to be ecstasy data, in our class a few weeks ago, and just really highlighted this exact point. I think they were Tesla tablets. So they showed different dosages of MDMA, and also one I think was like contaminated or had something else in there versus the other one. So, they're not always the same. And so I think that's like the potential, risk there as well, saying, oh, okay, like I got this checked, and I don't know. Who knows? Like maybe there's a tiny difference in like the way it's pressed, and maybe the machine learning can pick up like some slight nuances there. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, I think that could be. I mean, I guess it's better than anything to some degree, but I mean, you always want to test your substance, right? Like you definitely want to test and make sure that things are there, but.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the good. Michelle, you first.
Yeah, I guess I thought it was exciting when I saw it, right? Because finally an app where you could just take a photo of the pill and hopefully get some kind of useful information. Like, does this even contain MDMA? Is there a chance this contains fentanyl? I think that's really what people are worried about, and other substances, or, how much amphetamine is in this compared to MDMA? Like, if you're someone maybe with a heart issue or some other thing, you don't want to be taking, something with other substances. Pure MDMA would be safer. It kind of reminds me of, though, like so I have a lot of friends who are into foraging mushrooms, obviously, and they're not big fans of foraging using a guide with photographs, because mushrooms themselves can kind of be different, depending on how old or new they are, how much water they are. They can change color and all this kind of thing. And so it can be a little dangerous to identify mushrooms just from photos. And this reminds me of that, right? Because without the chemical analysis, what do we really know about these pills? And I also wonder, like, the database that it's checking them against, like, are those people testing the pills for like chemical content and strength? Like, how do we even know, like, where's that data coming from that it's cross-checking it against? Like, is it Arrowhead? Who's doing this? I wonder.
So there are groups that do test.
It's a good question to ask.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it's Earwid. I think Drugs Data does. I know there's other groups that do as well. I think they had linked in with the law enforcement group too, which is a little creepy, right? But, it's just paranoid Joe coming at it again. You're like, oh, look, I have drugs, and here's my app to prove I have drugs. And it's like, iffy. But, okay, so why it's good. At the very least, it's an opportunity for education for people who are about to use drugs. And the app can pop up warnings and recommendations regardless of what it is. And I think that's a net positive, right? I really hope the app suggests reagent tests or like ways to get more certainty.
Yeah.
But it's not clear based on the article if they're doing that, right? Right, because it seems like they just want everybody to live inside the app ecosystem.
Well, yeah, right.
But it's not clear if it's a free app, right? Like, I think it is.
And we should be clear for our listeners that this app is being released in England, and they're cross-checking against the European databases that are coming together. So not super relevant for American drug users yet, but I think that this kind of thing is going to become more common, or just more of these types of apps as we just shift as a culture towards a more harm reduction approach to drug checking rather than just saying no kind of thing. I think like another positive is just that it exists at all is kind of a big step for culture too.
Amen.
Right? It's really interesting that these are the kinds of things.
I found this is a French database.
Yeah.
Nuit Blanche.
Cool. So interesting. Yeah, I do hope that more like tech people want to develop apps like this that will really be about helping people and not just like, keeping people in the app. Like, if they care, they'll recommend you to places you can buy reagent tests and stuff like that. Take your drug checking to the next level. This could be a good place to start, like those mushroom identification apps, but you should keep going down the line if you really want to know or really want to. Yeah, that's interesting.
Right. Americans have very different concerns than the Europeans and British. The idea of fentanyl in the drug supply doesn't seem as prominent over there yet. I don't know exactly why, but best I can tell, Mexico, China are major manufacturers of fentanyl, and it's like coming through like Vancouver and California and through the Mexican border. You remember that abandoned KFC story? Have we told you that one? It was like on the Mexican border,
Yes.
and they dug a tunnel and they come through an abandoned KFC.
It reminded me of Breaking Bad. That's how I remember this story. I feel
Those
like we've
Pollos
talked
Hermanos.
about it here.
Yeah, totally. It's one of my favorites for smuggling. But tunnels are cheap, right? Walls don't work for tunnels. And, it's not even getting into drones and like slingshots and all sorts of other methods you could get over that wall with. So fentanyl's powerful as shit.
I guess I just hope that as this becomes more of a cultural norm and there's articles about it and apps and this kind of thing, that we can get drug checking in major cities, just like have it be a legal center. You can go, no one will, arrest you for possession of bringing your Coke or MDMA or whatever, not just psychedelics, and get your drugs tested so you know what you're taking. I heard a rumor that New York City might start doing this, which I'm so excited about, but it's not yet official, so I don't want to spoil anything. But I know Vancouver already does it. And the person who told me about this, she had a few other cities that she knows. The public health department is allowing drug testing. And so drug checking, so it's it's a really exciting time. I really hope that this, just keeps progressing to keep people safe. And keep checking your drugs, everybody, please, especially this summer. It's going to be a wild summer. Just make sure you know what you're taking. I think that was kind of the point of this article, too. People, I think some bars and stuff are about to open up in the UK and in Europe, and the party's about to start. People are really eager to connect and party and go out, and I am, too. But yeah, I want everyone to do so as safely as possible. So check your drugs. Do we have any, websites we can recommend for listeners where you can buy the Regent tests to test your MDMA and LSD and other things? DanceSafe.org, right?
DanceSafe, Bunk Police, and Elevation Chemicals are the main companies as far as I understand. I prefer DanceSafe just because it's a great nonprofit and they've been doing a lot of work for years. They also offer the fentanyl test strips.
Yeah, for really cheap, which really is so important.
$2 a test. Follow the instructions carefully because it's easy to screw up.
And we might be trying to develop a little free offering where we show folks how to do it, right? Is that still in the works? So keep an eye out for that.
I would love to do that. Yeah,
me too.
I would absolutely love to do that.
So yeah, we're going to try.
I took a bunch of videos years ago. I thought I was going to get arrested, so I decided against it.
You can just put me in them. Screw it.
Perfect. Yeah. I was like, oh, this was done in a lab in Czechoslovakia, not in Breckenridge, Colorado. Whoops. Kyle?
I was going to say, if anybody wants like a high-level analysis too, you could send your sample into drugsdata.org. I think it's $100. You could send it in there and you'll get, mass spectrometry. So you'll get, readouts on how much is in there, the dosage and whatnot. So.
Right. And energy control as well. I think they're the alternate test site.
In Europe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Americans can send there, but, pick your poison. And, the argument here is not only like the human cost, like the real financial cost of an overdose is extreme relative to getting ahead of this. So cities and governments can save money by offering this. They'll do, less dead bodies to pick up with your EMTs, less situations of, overdose to respond to. And, not to mention all the fentanyl panic where everybody's in like, the Homer Simpson, like radioactive hazmat suits to like respond to a fentanyl situation. But if we can do harm reduction, like say, hey, these are people too, we also save money and we save lives and we get those lives back into society in a hopefully a meaningful way.
So important. So important.
Yeah. I saw some stuff on like, contraception recently for like young people, and I was like, oh, what a way to ethically get ahead of all these problems, and save money at the same time. So weird. All right, Next up, SB 519. So we made a mistake last week. Sorry, everybody. All of us ranted about decrim versus legal. None of us really dug into the bill itself. We were looking at the media and saying like, oh, this is just the same as all the other shit that's been going on. Like everybody's saying legal when it's really decrim. We were wrong. We had a listener reach out to us. Thank you for letting us know. I want to read like a little bit from this.
Please.
And then we can kind of riff on it. And I just suggest people read it if you're going to be like in that area, getting into some fun stuff. But it literally says like possession is legitimate.
And sharing, right?
And social sharing. When commerce gets in the mix, that's when there's a problem. So, and you know, you could have a massive grow, and at the state level, it's probably legal, but the feds can always step in. But I really love, like, the first couple paragraphs of this are beautiful. So I really started to become even more of a fanboy of Scott Wiener. So existing law categorizes certain drugs and other substances as controlled substances and prohibits various actions related to these substances, including their manufacture, transportation, sale, possession, and ingestion. This bill would make lawful the possession for personal use as described and the social sharing as defined of psilocybin, psilocin, dimethyltryptamine, ibogaine, mescaline, lysergic acid, diethylamide, LSD, ketamine. I'm not going to spell out MDMA, but MDMA by and with persons 21 years of age and older. This bill would provide penalties for possession of these substances on school grounds or possession by or sharing with persons under the age of 21. So the law will actually turn around and repeal cultivation, transport, etc. of mushrooms. And it also protects peyote nicely and literally like names the federal bills that gave the Native American Church legal protection for peyote. So I think that's pretty legit, and names alternate non-peyote sources of mescaline.
San Pedro.
So yeah, big wins. Like the bill is like damning of the drug war, of criminalization, talks about how criminalization and the drug war have added more harm to consumption. And the fact that it passed the California Senate means that these politicians are starting to catch on to like how brutal this has been. And like, you know, in this post BLM, post George Floyd era and Breonna Taylor era, like, hey, you guys got to clean your act up. Otherwise you're going to have riots on your hands. And this is a move in the right direction. Unfortunately, it's psychedelics only, but that's still a step in the right direction, in my opinion. Because, you know, how many people of color are really hanging out, like carrying mescaline in Oakland or LA?
Actually,
right?
Probably more than we think.
More than we think, totally. Like especially in Oakland,
Right,
like
that's
my
what I was thinking.
my exposure now to like some of the folks in Oakland, it's like really blowing my mind. We'll hopefully get our new friend Kyle on the show from Oakland. Just continually blows my mind. And I had such a fun time with him. So more on that soon. I don't want to name him yet. But any comments from either of you on the California deal?
You know, I'm in here right now, and like right at the top there, it says SB 519 as amended, and it just says decriminalization of certain hallucinogenic substances. And I know I pointed that out last week as well, and so it is kind of confusing there. Of, you know, they're using decriminalization there right in the right front and center there in the beginning. So I guess there's maybe confusion around what does lawful possession and sharing mean. Does that mean it's legal or just decriminalized? And I think when we think of legalization, we think of, you know, sales regulation and stuff like that. Right. So
I think that is exactly it, Kyle. Like legal means you can do money transactions.
Yeah.
But decrim means no. But it's interesting, and I really like the bill. I didn't really see possession limits anywhere either when I was poking around.
Yeah, no, I just want to apologize for not reading it as closely as I could have before last time. I am, and then only working part-time this month. But no, I'm glad that we went back and are correcting ourselves. And I really, will keep following SB 519. There's another bill that I'd like to talk about as well when you guys are ready that is similar, but even better and more mind-blowing.
Yeah, let's do it. Because there's similar language, and our friends at Drug Policy Alliance get in on this one. Go for it, Michelle.
Yes. So there's a new bill that's being introduced. Here, let me get my details here. So there's a new bill being introduced by Democratic Representative Bonnie Watson Coleman, Democrat from New Jersey, and Cori Bush, Democrat from, what's MO, Missouri? I don't even know. I'm the worst American.
What was the acronym again?
MO.
I think it is Missouri.
Okay. They've unveiled the Drug Policy Reform Act, DPRA, to help right some of the wrongs from Nixon's war on drugs. So this is coming from Filter Mag by Alex Norcia. But basically, with the help of the Drug Policy Alliance, this first of its kind bill would end criminal penalties for all drug possession at the federal level. This is like my Christmas. I'm so excited. I know. It would also transition regulatory power from the Attorney General to the Secretary of Health and Human Services, expunge drug-related criminal records, and provide for resentencing options, and invest in health-centered approaches to drug use. The legislation additionally addresses many lifelong ramifications associated with drug convictions, like denial of employment, voting rights, and immigration status. It's a huge bill. We also, looked into, from the DPA's website, drugpolicy.org, they also do a summary of the act. You guys will put it in the show notes. It just covers a lot of really important issues. Basically, it calls for the United States and the Congress to refocus its strategies for addressing substance use and turn to a strategy that is health-focused, evidence-based, and respectful of self-determination. I just want to cry. I can't believe something like this is, even if it doesn't pass federally, and I'm getting ahead of myself already, the fact that this is going, to vote or just exists at all is a really big deal. And this only became news yesterday, so Tuesday, June 15th. So, a few days ago when this comes out on Friday, but this is very current news, really exciting stuff. I wonder what you guys think of it.
Overall, I can't even imagine that it made it to the Senate. And I really, really hope it gets some publicity and traction. DPA, I think, was behind the scenes in a lot of these other bills that we've seen, and they tested it in certain regions. And, my first instinct is that it won't pass this time around, but, Drug Policy Alliance is really backing it and focusing on this, and they found allies. And, the allyship is only going to grow. And the messaging is ideal, in my opinion, on this thing.
It's so good.
There was some stuff on expunging records too, right?
Yeah, let me go to that.
Of even possession.
Yeah.
And it named how many people were going to jail for simple possession.
Yeah, I have here... So Section 7, the summary is expungement and sealing of records. So no later than 1 year after enactment, each federal district will review cases in order to automatically seal records that involve charges of drug possession offense decriminalized by this act. There will also be an order to respect an expunged conviction or, I don't know this word, adjudication of juvenile delinquency. But basically, seal, if you got arrested as under 18, it could seal your record, for simple possession. And it's I just can't believe this is happening. And also like relief for people currently incarcerated or on supervision for certain drug convictions. So, it mandates sentencing review hearing for individuals with qualifying convictions for offenses decriminalized by this act. It'll identify individuals who have been charged with an offense decriminalized by this bill and will have their sentence vacated. It prohibits drug testing of individuals in order to receive federal benefits. Drug use charges and convictions will no longer be a reason to deny people, food stamps, housing assistance, other federal benefits. You can't fire someone based on a criminal history for simple drug possession. It keeps going. I'll stop reading because that gets boring. But it eliminates immigration-related consequences for personal use, drug possession. Just like basically all the things that the drug war was really targeting and destroying communities of color and marginalized folks, low income folks were struggling the most with a lot of these issues. And this bill is less about drug users and more about those communities and making sure that they're, safer and in better hands than these very violent policing for simple drug possession and the repercussions that getting arrested for simple drug possession has mostly on Black and brown folks, much less so than white folks. Like, we get away with our drug possession and other folks have their lives ruined, immigration status ruined, futures ruined, housing, everything. And so this is the answer that we've been waiting for. I also have no idea, have my doubts of whether this will pass the first time or not. But I mean, if Biden wants to do something really big for this country, this is it.
Right.
But I think a lot of people are waking up to this fact and people want to push for change, right? I mean, I think most people are seeing failure in the drug war and how it's really kind of damaged a lot of people's lives.
Exactly.
Imagine if DPA was able to get Carl Hart in front of Congress to testify in favor of this passing. That would blow my mind. All about it.
I would watch
and,
C-SPAN for
really,
that.
We got to convince all those people first, right? Before the president can really have too much impact. This is a big financial situation. The country, for those of you who aren't in the United States, don't follow the United States too closely, the United States is in big financial trouble. And for a lot of reasons. And the drug war is a big detriment to the economy, but certain, private industries like to keep it this way. It's like an annuity. The more people you can keep in jail, the more money you make. Like stocks and bonds that are invested in private prisons and all sorts of fun stuff, like selling arms to the DEA and local law enforcement because we're afraid of drugs. It's the drug war made drugs more dangerous and more harmful. Didn't ever do a lick of good. Best I can tell. So legalize, regulate, educate, and provide safe tools for your citizens, please. A lot of European nations are already on board. Let's catch up.
I came across
actually
this,
care about your people.
Yeah, I came across this quote by, it was in a book that I'm listening to on Audible by Martine Prachtel, but I wrote it down. And the quote is, "But wars waged against plants are absurdity when carried out by the very culture addicted to them." It just got me thinking, right? We're all addicted to some sort of substance, or maybe not addicted, but we all find pleasure in substances and changing our minds in those different ways. And yeah, it is so absurd. We all kind of engage in that to some capacity, whether not everybody, but just interesting to think about.
Absolutely. Can you imagine if we treated caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, SSRIs, birth control? Okay, we could do kind of birth control like this, but if we treated these really normal things that people depend on to function, which do change their mind, if we criminalize them the same way we've been criminalizing cannabis, cocaine, LSD, this is also really exciting because that never made sense, right? Because like things like cannabis have been proven to be way safer than alcohol for so long. And if this bill does pass, I feel like that's sending a message to the whole world that like we can be rational again, or like, this wasn't rational. This wasn't based on science. And a lot of people mistrust us now because of that. And they don't know what is actually here to benefit me. Is this actually protecting me, or what is this here for? And people the past 50 years have not trusted the government because of this in a way. And what would we be showing young people if we did this? I think it would be a step in the right direction, like to have a little bit more, not that we like need more respect for authority, but like we could respect authority at all if they could show us that they could, rule or govern us within a rational, science-based way. I think that would be really huge culturally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was just rereading Psychedelic Medicine by Richard Lewis Miller this last couple days, and their discussion around running MDMA trials in Israel, and how Israel really wanted to do it. Like lots of officials in Israel wanted to do it, but they were afraid of retaliation by the United States, meaning, pulling of funding. Israel is, I think, the largest foreign aid recipient from the United States for a number of interesting reasons. And they were afraid to lose that financing. And I don't blame them, right? Like some people commented about fearing sanctions, which, right, for running trials. I don't think so. I think pulling funds might even be a little iffy because the United States, for a number of reasons, wants Israel to have all that power in the region. And so I don't think we would have been seen pulling money or sanctions, but they were afraid of it still. And this is, coercion at the global scale. For those of you who want to learn more about this, Confessions of an Economic Hitman is a really good book to read about how corrupt the global system can be and how coercion can work. And not to mention, like, we forced this down the UN's throat.
Exactly. I was just thinking that.
And then it went globally, Chasing the Scream is a great view of the history of the drug war and explains quite extensively what happened and why it happened. And there's plenty of other books on the history of the drug war too. That's just the one that kind of struck me the most.
But the U.S. does have a lot of power in a way, like because they have a lot of money and they're huge, and they did force these drug laws down the rest of the country's throat 50 years ago. And so if we kind of have to be the first ones to step back and be like, oh shit, we were wrong, sorry, and make the changes, and then other countries I think will feel safer to do so, because I think like what you were just talking about, Joe, I mean, even though we're not like quite sure what it would look like in reality, I think politically behind closed doors, there probably has been a lot of threats like, oh, you can't do that, or we won't do this, and all this kind of thing, like U.S. and foreign relations. And so totally. I think, if the U.S. does do this, it will kind of like give permission in a way for other less wealthy, powerful countries to do so as well without fear of the U.S. retaliating and taking away some product they need or something in a trade deal or whatever, right? Or money or whatever. So America, you really have to do this. It's for the rest of the world. It's not just about you. It's about everybody. I don't know. I'm excited.
Right. And we've been lied to for so long about the drug war that we can't understand it clearly.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to be reading, like, how many people are going to read books about the drug war? Like less than 1% of the global population or even US population. So uphill battle. That's why we're in a media war around this. We see people like Dr. Drew spreading lies about drugs regularly. Plenty of other physicians lie about drugs all the time, or at least spread misinformation. And, let's look at Portugal. What was the consequence to Portugal in regards to decriminalization? I don't think much. Same thing with Switzerland when it started doing, free government heroin to reduce AIDS and other overdose. So, just stay aware and, learn as much as you can, because this is a really important battle for our future. Are you afraid that when you have kids, that your kids might go to jail for simple possession at age 16 or 12 or whatever? In some communities, you do have to worry about that more than others. And often it's people of color who are the most, abused population in the country. Anyway, probably enough on that one. So thank you, Drug Policy Alliance and the sponsors of that bill. I'm really excited to see what happens and can't wait to get behind it. Maybe we can do some media on it too.
Absolutely. We'll keep you all posted for sure.
Now we've got this Silo Wellness UCFS joint venture. We found out about this one from Psilocybin Alpha. I think it's kind of like an investment site.
Yeah, it's like a press release type thing, but it's kind of interesting. And they had that safe harbor thing at the bottom. Like, yeah, I saw that. These things might be misleading and we don't want to pump our stock unfairly. It was funny. But like, at least this company has a partnership with UCSF. Yeah. And they're looking at bipolar disorder and Parkinson's. Yeah, the interesting is they're looking at psilocybin as an anti-inflammatory agent in Parkinson's and bipolar. Let me find the thing here. So this is the
and chronic back pain.
Yeah, exactly. So the CEO of Psilopharma, Eric Weisblum, says inflammation is a common mechanism across numerous physical diseases. Inflammation has specifically been implicated in the pathophysiology of Parkinson's disease, chronic pain, and bipolar disorder, which I didn't know. It's so interesting. We should ask Ben when we record next. Psilocybin and related compounds have also shown strong anti-inflammatory effects in non-human animals, raising the possibility that reducing inflammation is a possible mechanism underlying psilocybin's positive treatment effects in multiple disorders. And so, they're saying that like a better understanding of the anti-inflammatory effects of psilocybin would have the potential to allow for optimization and personalization of psilocybin treatment. Kind of next level and cool. Interesting. I'm open to hear what they find out. And what do we know about
UCSF? Who's going to be there real soon?
Robin-Carhart Harris is going to be there very soon. Is this, I guess, is this the same? He's at the Band Lab. Is this going to, do you think it's
this looks a little bit different. Or maybe, I don't know. He's
no, he's going to be at Neuroscape. I'm thinking Neuroscape, of the Band Lab was the researchers who are doing the bipolar study. And I think they're also doing the Parkinson's study. So they are going to be looking at psilocybin for, Parkinson's disease, bipolar 2 depression. And there's another really interesting one that those researchers, they're doing a bit different stuff, which is cool. And I'm kind of like here for this. Like, clearly psilocybin can help with depression. I feel like that one's obvious. I don't know. For me, it definitely has worked. And so I guess I have like that I'm going on. But I'm really interested to hear other applications. We have a piece that just came out in the blog where a writer of ours and partner, Court Wing, interviews Robin-Carhart Harris. It's a pretty long Q&A. It's really interesting. And the two of them start talking about possible like mechanistic actions of how psilocybin might help chronic pain. And I just recommend everyone go read it. It's really cool to hear Robin talk about some like other aspects of, how psilocybin assisted therapy specifically like might be working in other applications. And I think this is kind of like the future of this stuff. I think this is probably what the podcast will turn into, discussing this kind of research eventually.
Tight. Robin-Carhart Harris actually learned a bunch from Court in their conversations, and it's really interesting because Robin-Carhart Harris, being one person, can't understand all the implications of the Rebus model. There's just too many implications, and it's an excellent model, and it can be used in a lot of places. I've been talking to Court a lot one-on-one for a number of projects that maybe we can get into later, but it's just really fascinating that, somebody like Court can get to the point where he's having like really fun, interesting conversations with Carhart Harris and educate us. Also, he presented to Wave Paths a few times, and I find that really fascinating too.
Yeah, the interview reads kind of intimate. They're both like clearly engaged in the conversation. Robin sometimes asks court questions. It's kind of cool. So I definitely recommend folks giving that a read if you're interested, in his work and psilocybin research in general. I feel like I really wanted to publish it because I felt like if people really well-versed in this world read it, it could spark a whole bunch of new ideas for them as well, which is why we wanted to put it out there. So definitely check it out, share it with your friends. I think there's really big things coming. I'm really excited for Robin to move to California. I also kind of fear for him a little. America's so different than England. I hope it's not too much of a culture shock. But he'll be fine. He's a smart man.
If he can deal with London, he can deal with San Francisco.
I guess, but the politics in San Francisco are so different, I don't know. Anyway.
That's true. It's pretty intense.
Yeah.
It's really intense there. I'm happy I'm not in the Bay, but I thank you all for being in the Bay.
My brother's visiting from there. And yeah, for him, actually, like when we go to the grocery store and no one's wearing masks anymore in New Jersey and stuff, it's like his mind is so blown. It's been such a different vibe over there.
It's like when I went to Tennessee, it's like wide open. Like, this is crazy. Kyle, do you have anything on this one before we jump to the next one?
Nope, just excited. And yeah, so this study is also taking place at the, I'm trying to just look at this. So the translational psychedelic research at UCSF. And I think maybe that is a little bit different, like different departments than Neuroscape, because they're both kind of happening there. I found another article here saying the TRPR team is reaching out to other programs. This is in lucid.news. Other programs and institution. Bradley says that she's excited to see UCF's Neuroscape neuroscience begin with research as well. So I'm guessing both of these kind of programs are under the UCF umbrella there, but maybe two different programs.
Yeah.
Which is also badass, right? Like how many different labs are studying psychedelics at a single hospital is a great indication of the direction we're going. So really psyched.
Same.
All right. Next up, from the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science in the United States of America, article titled "Language Extinction Triggers the Loss of Unique Medical Knowledge," written by Rodrigo Camara-Lorette and Jordi Bascompte, edited by B.L. Turner at ASU in Tempe, Arizona, meaning I should probably link up with that person once I'm in Arizona again. But let me read the abstract and we can chat about it and we can read the summary here. So abstract, over 30% of the 7,400 languages in the world will no longer be spoken at the end of the century. So far, however, our understanding of whether language extinction may result in the loss of linguistically unique knowledge remains limited. Here, we ask to what degree indigenous knowledge of medicinal plants is associated with individual languages and quantify how much indigenous knowledge may vanish as languages and plants go extinct. Focusing on 3 regions that have high biocultural diversity, we show that over 75% of all the 12,495 medicinal plant services are linguistically unique, i.e. only known to one language, whereas most plant species associated with linguistically unique knowledge are not threatened. Most languages that report linguistically unique knowledge are. Our finding of high uniqueness in indigenous knowledge and strong coupling with threatened languages suggests that language loss will be even more critical to the extinction of medicinal knowledge than biodiversity loss. So I'm reading that as we're probably going to lose more medicinal plants due to lack of, it's kind of weird because I'm kind of like a eco fanatic, but we're going to lose more medicinal knowledge from language loss than from actual, habitat and species loss. All right. Any initial thoughts, Michelle?
Yeah, it's really interesting and sad, but Like, yes, like, indigenous cultures, like indigenous communities, a lot of their culture and ritual are being lost in these younger generations, just as as a means to survive. People are leaving their small towns, going to big cities for more, better jobs, better work, better salaries, and not, living with their grandparents and learning their indigenous tongue. And so what this article is saying is that the researchers looked at, these really unique languages, and part of their medicinal plant knowledge is in the words. It's not so much written, right? There's not a lot of written information and in general on indigenous history and culture and their medicinal plant knowledge. A lot of it is passed down orally, and the words themselves communicate what these plants are used for and stuff. And as we lose those words, you lose the knowledge of what this flower helped, my grandma, cure her whatever with. And it's sad. It's a reason to preserve indigenous culture. It's and I guess I wanted to bring this up because it's not specific to psychedelics, but outside of the indigenous cultures that have psychedelic ceremonies, so many indigenous cultures just have other medicinal plant knowledge that we're not as enthused about because, they don't cause these big trips and stuff as mushrooms or peyote do, but it's still really important. And I think as a community that really tries to learn from indigenous wisdom, we need to branch out. That's kind of why I wanted to talk about this and start just trying to preserve and help indigenous culture in general, maybe not just the communities that, take ayahuasca or psilocybin mushrooms as part of their culture. There are other communities that really need our help and our, any kind of donation, any kind of time that folks can give, because we are already losing so much important knowledge. There's a whole pharmacy in the forest that we don't even know about. And we're going to all these synthetic chemical things as solutions when maybe there's a flower for that, And so I just wanted to get the conversation going about this.
Super, super important. Like I mentioned, I'm listening to this audiobook by Martine Prechtel. It's called The Unlikely Peace of Cuchumakik, The Parallel Lives of People as Plants and Keeping the Seeds Alive. But I think the main point that he's kind of exploring is the rich cultural context of plants and just the deep history that, the people that he lived with, the Tutsujil or something like that in Guatemala. And just their rituals around planting corn and how corn was the plant that they really just focused on. Just even talking about the rich history of cacao. And he made some comments in the book about hallucinogens like ayahuasca. And he's oh, those are novice plants. Once you start getting into these other plants, there's more depth to it. I was that's an interesting comment to hear. But just thinking about all the different knowledge that is preserved in these oral traditions. It's sad to see that it could be going away. But what do we do there, right? As maybe the younger generations within those tribes or within those cultures are leaving for the cities, they don't find interest in it. Some probably do. But I guess it's this metaphor that Martine uses, how do we keep the seeds alive and keep it going? I guess just finding interest in it, right? We need to know about our environment. And maybe that's just since we've been moving away from that at times, we're not as interested in, just everything plant related. We can go buy it. We can go, but what happens when that starts to, if we ever get to the point in human civilization where things start to collapse and we need to kind of understand the environment a little bit more and the plants, we're going to be very lost. just going outside and looking around you. What plants do you know? What stories do you know about the plants around you? Do you know what's edible? Do you know what's medicinal?
Yeah.
All these things that you call weeds are actually, edible plants or have really great medicinal value. And so do you know the story of the landscape in which you live in? It's really important. Most of us don't. We don't have like a narrative around the landscape. We just kind of exist within it and don't really think about it. So it's like, coming back from more of that relational approach of how we're living our lives. What is our relationship to the landscape and the environment around us? Are we engaging with it, or are we just kind of ignoring it? And, what type of long-term effect does that have?
Taking it for granted.
Yeah.
No, it's such a good point, Kyle. And I feel like we've talked about this before, possibly on the podcast, but just like, I feel like COVID and like the grocery store scares of last spring was the first time where I had to think about like, oh crap, like, without all this prepackaged meat and all this stuff, like, do I know how to survive? Like, no, most of us don't. And that's why these these indigenous like cultures and languages, like they've been living off the land that they were born on. If they are lucky enough to have be able to live on the land they were born on, it's a whole other thing. But they know that's part of their culture and their tradition is to know, because they've been dependent on it forever. And in our Western culture, I couldn't survive for very long, probably. Like, I do feel like I really want to learn some more survival skills, my local plants, edible plants, how to make a fire and keep it alive. Like, God, I'm such a city person, like, actually, when it really comes down to it. And so I think a lot of us are waking up to the importance of this in general. I also think, or this is the impression I have in Mexico, is like the last generation, like our parents' generation, was really not that involved in keeping their indigenous culture alive. They wanted to go to the cities, make big money, be part of capitalism. Not everyone, but this has been a trend. And then in our generation and the younger generation, there's a trend in reconnecting with your roots. And so it's almost like in style again to learn your grandmother's language, learn about the plants, learn how to make your own pulque, which is like this fermented alcohol drink that's popular again in Mexico. Now that I'm outside of the country, I feel like I don't even know what I'm talking about. But there is this movement, like in America, to reconnect with your ancestors, right? We keep seeing the word ancestor a lot in the psychedelic community, and it's young people that want to learn more about their history because it affects how they react to the world. And I think that there's a movement for that, at least I know in Mexico, to reconnect with that as well. But when will it be too late? If we're not doing it now, it is going to be too late. And so it's good that it's becoming in style again. But it's so important, and studies like this pointing to it are so important to keep it alive. Sorry, Kyle.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I feel like it ebbs and flows. I heard this metaphor. I think it was in the movie Dances of Ecstasy. And the narrator of that movie kind of had this analogy that, Western civilization has left the Garden of Eden, and we have this yearning to go back because we realize the limitations of walking outside of it, versus maybe in more indigenous cultures are living inside of the garden and really want to explore outside. So, you're just talking about that wanting to leave and then experiencing the outside world and realize whoa, we've gone too far. How do we go back? But, there's that polar type of thing that's going on.
Absolutely. It reminds me
So how do we find the balance between it all?
It's like a cliche, but the grass is always greener, right? And we're seeing it on both sides. Western people want to get way more in touch with plant medicine and our roots. And indigenous people, some groups want the support that Western capitalism brings. More money, more access, internet, whatever. There's definitely a balance, but is there efforts being made to find that balance? Is there support? Is there government support, financial support to make sure that balance is held? I don't know. Hopefully with the UN, apparently part of this study was saying that next year till 2032, so 2022 to 2032 is going to be the UN decade for indigenous preservation, and that maybe there'll be more, this kind of sanctioned, efforts. But yeah, we'll see. I don't know any details on that. I can look into it for a future podcast, but it's really important stuff that we're a little disconnected from in America, but like not really. And it's important to be talking and thinking about because, yeah, there's so much here.
In the article,
if that
just to
interests
close
you,
it out, only about 6% of higher plants have been screened for biological activity. Therefore, accessing to what degree linguistically unique medicinal services are truly effective in the Western sense is beyond the scope of this paper. In many instances, these plants have been proven medicinally effective, albeit there are also exceptions. Regardless of that, here we treat this knowledge as what it is, part of the cultural heritage of Indigenous people. So I read this as a call to action for ethnobotanists, a la Terrence Dennis McKenna, amazing ethnobotanist, Kat Harrison, and many others. There's a lot of them that aren't as famous as those three. But we can't really force people to go, oh, no, you have to go back to your culture. It's like, well, no, you can do what you want to do. But at the higher level, we understand that there's a ton of value here for humanity as a whole. So we're going to, do our best to fund this proper research. And Kyle, what were you going to say?
Actually, it comes back to something Kat asked us when I was taking the class with her. And maybe this is something that if you're listening, you could reflect on. But what's your family ethnobotany? So what's your relationship to plants within your family? And it could be anything from growing tomato plants in the garden, and or maybe you had special herbs that you grew around the house. Could just be anything simple. Maybe you notice your family likes to just grow basil inside and use that. So it could be a really a simple way to start asking these questions is, what is like your family's history to plants, and were there any plants involved in your life growing up? And if, how do you dig into that a little bit more, start to cultivate some more interest there?
And just before we stop talking about this, I want to just correct myself really quick. I was talking about the UN decade thing, and it's actually the United Nations proclamation of 2022 to 2032 as the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. And that aims to raise global awareness about their endangerment and importance for sustainable development. So if you're listening, I wanted to correct myself.
Yeah, thanks for that.
No worries.
That you said it properly based on what the paper said.
I said what I remembered,
so you're good there.
But yeah, I just went and checked really quick.
I was reading it as you were saying it, so you're good. But yeah, that's the real thing. And for those who aren't aware, languages help you see the world in very different ways.
So true.
When we learn multiple languages, we get a bigger picture of reality. I remember this being a talk track years ago when I was on like some early psychedelic forums like the Grow Report, and Lorenzo was hanging out there and stuff. And some people were saying they were going to switch between Android and iOS operating systems and Linux operating systems, and like just regularly shifting what they use so they see the world more fully as others see it. And I was like, that's a really interesting way to do this because technology dominates our life so much now. And this is 10 years ago and not many people had Android phones yet. It was a big deal. So anyway,
just thinking about just quickly about language, but I remember hearing this thing about maybe the Eskimos up in Alaska have like 30 different words for snow, right? To describe snow. And it's like just thinking about the nuances around your environment. And how does each word really describe, those differences in the environment? How does it correlate to certain things? So just thinking about the importance, like we just think snow and that's it. I'm sure in the ski world, you have all those different terms like
powder,
powder.
Not 30,
wow.
But powder is a very large category. There's a lot of kinds of powder. But this, the Eskimo thing, I was reading a book recently and it actually cited a paper showing that's not accurate. That's interesting.
Okay.
But it illustrates a great point, though, that some languages are able to handle nuance better than others, or relationship better than others. Like, a number of these African languages where they're essentially living processed thought, and that's baked into the language. We don't necessarily have that.
No.
Whitehead had to make a whole new language essentially to be able to explain process thinking and process philosophy. Well, all right, we're at an hour. Any closing thoughts before I wrap it up for us?
Nope.
Not here.
All right.
No.
Cool. Well, thank you both. This is awesome. And we covered a ton. Sorry, everybody, again, for our mistakes on SP 519. We'll do more later. Oh, yeah, I guess I forgot to mention this. Next week, there is a conference. It's in partnership with psychedelicsnow.com, a virtual conference. You can get there, psychedelicsnow.com or from psychedelicstoday.com. And it is, Wednesday, June 23rd, from 10 a.m. to 2:30 Pacific. There's 3 different panels. One's on clear. The panel is called Clearing the Haze, What's Legal Today. Number 2, ketamine clinics, do's and don'ts. And then a panel on investing in the space. So I've got a friend on the panel on investing. Pretty small. I think I have friends on every panel. So I'm psyched about the conference. It's totally free. We're a major sponsor and partner here. So come check it out. And July 22, Navigating Psychedelics for Clinicians and Therapists kicks off again for an 8-week series, and it is CE approved. And come check it out, psychedelicstoday.com or psychedeliceducationcenter.com. All right, everybody. I think that's it for now. Kyle, Michelle, thank you both.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
We'll see you all next Tuesday. Bye-bye.